Welcome to yet another episode of Within WordPress, the podcast that is about WordPress, the WordPress community, and all the fine folks that make up that wonderful community. Today with us is Nat. Welcome to the show. And I asked my guests pretty much the same question as a first question. Like, who are you and where would they be able to know you from?
Cool. Hey, thanks, Remkus, for having me. Great opportunity to be on your podcast. We've been chatting for a while now online and stuff. So
Yeah.
great to be a guest. So Nat Miletich, I'm from western part of Canada, a city called Calgary. I've lived here since the 90s. Originally, I'm from Europe, from Serbia. And yeah, I've lived here since the mid 90s. So for quite a while, most of my life I've been in Canada. I've been in the WordPress ecosystem or space, I want to say, not that long. Not as long as you have, definitely. I kind of jumped back and forth into it a few times. We started getting a little bit more serious about it, I want to say, in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a great experience so far. I own a company called Clio websites. We develop WordPress websites for trying to focus primarily on SaaS companies
Yeah.
um, and startups, and mostly from a marketing perspective, marketing focused and SEO focused. And WordPress has been our tool of choice.
When you say mostly focusing on SaaS companies, what does that mean? I mean, I think most of us
Yeah,
know what SaaS means. It's a software as a service, but what does that look
software as
like in
a service.
your,
Yeah. So, typically, I mean, folks always kind of in our industry try to get you to like niche down,
yep,
to a particular industry. And we've started to do that a little bit more recently. Of course, when you're starting out, it's a little bit different because you can't be as selective, right? You don't have enough work coming in and stuff like that. But once you kind
yep,
of establish it a little bit, it's a good idea to kind of niche down. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to market to software as a service companies that are interested in kind of like boosting their web presence, boosting their SEO results from their website, bringing in more leads, more signups, and things like that. So we kind of, combine some of our knowledge when it comes to, building websites, but also building websites that are responsive, that have good performance on all those devices, and that are focused a little bit more on SEO.
yep.
And typically, SaaS companies are looking for all of those things, right? They're looking for good-looking websites, but then also websites that perform well and that bring in leads and bring in SEO traffic.
So I would then assume that a large portion of what it is that you do is focused on the SEO, and possibly not only optimization, but also content creation side of things.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, definitely. So we do a little bit of content creation. We typically work with other content freelancers in order to bring them into various projects. Just because, I mean, now that we've kind of started to niche down a little bit, it's a bit easier because we have people that are knowledgeable in this kind of SaaS and tech space that can write the content. But
Yeah.
what we used to do before is we used to have various freelancers that we worked with, depending on the industry, right? So if we're working with a client that's like a art sales or whatever, we would have somebody that's a little bit more specific for creating content in that area.
Yep.
So long story short, we work with different freelancers to create content because we try to create, if we are creating content, we're trying to create unique and valuable stuff, not just to drive clicks and whatever.
Yep.
And so, so you need good quality people that are, creating actual content that people want to read and engage with.
Something that converts. Yeah, that's an art form in of itself. Most people think
Yeah.
that, just create content and then look what the SEO plugin tells you that you need to do, and you're good.
Yeah. And you're good. Yeah. You get
Yep.
the green smileys and the
Yeah.
traffic can start flowing in.
Yeah. 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 I wish it was that easy. There's a lot more that goes into that. So,
Yeah, for sure.
um, You said, niche down. What prompted that? Like, was that a desire, or were you looking to expand business? Maybe ask another question first. You said we. What is we constituting
Mm.
in
Yeah,
your
so I have 3 full-time employees and myself, and, we work with other freelancers as well, depending on the project. If we need
Yep.
something a little more specific, we bring in other folks. But yeah, when I say we, like, we try to keep it fairly flat organizationally, because it's a small company. So I do some of the work myself as well. And, but for the most part, I try to just kind of stick to, the sales aspect, the marketing and stuff like that. Uh,
So you
Twitter
you
takes a
installed
lot
the
longer.
you installed the 4 plugins you, showed on Twitter today, and then from there, uh,
Start a new project, install the
yeah.
plugins, add the
For
experts to it, and off they go.
yeah, for those who have no clue what 4 plugins I'm referencing to, what are the 4 plugins you install for every single project?
Well, so two are kind of the same plugin, and the other two are default plugins because we use SiteGround for most of these. So there's the SiteGround optimizer, and then there's their security plugin, which kind of like gets added to all of their
Yep.
projects. They actually have like some starter plugin as well. That's like it's so annoying. So that's one I uninstall when I start a
Yeah,
new project, and then
yeah,
of course we start and then we use Elementor for most of our builds. So we just use Elementor and Elementor Pro. So that's the other. Those are the four.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I have to ask the next question then, because if you're doing a lot of SEO, you're also using an SEO plugin, I assume. Do you have a favorite, or do you have, like, whichever works for this particular project best, that's what we'll end up using? Or how does
Yeah.
that work?
So I mean the two kind of two plugins that we use almost always for these are either Ranked Math or Yoast.
Yep.
We used to use Yoast exclusively. We moved to Rank Math a couple of years ago just because, for the most part, they have a little bit more features in their free version. A
Sure.
lot of clients, not that we have a problem paying for premium plugins or Yoast premium and whatever, but a lot of folks, for the majority of their needs, Rank Math
Yeah,
free kind of does the trick. So and it's a little bit more configurable. I think Yoast has started to move in that direction as well,
they
with
did.
their
Yeah.
new kind of use as well in terms of like the settings and stuff. It's a little bit more. I think it's a little bit better than what they had. But anyway, to answer your question, we use Rank Math or Yoast.
Yep.
Sometimes the client already have one or the other, and they prefer one or the other. We'll work with either of those. I like some features of Rank Math more. I like some features of Yoast more. So we're kind of indifferent. But yeah, for our needs, like for my site, for example, I use Rank Math.
I mean, I had to ask it, if there's, if there's SEO, then, no, let me rephrase. If there's plugins people get excited about and have a very strong opinion about it, it's caching plugins, it's security plugins, and it's SEO plugins. I find those three
Sure.
to be oh, I have an opinion about this. I need this one.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or mine's better than yours. You should use
Yeah, yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. My page builder is better than yours, and my page
Oh, for
builder will
sure.
kick your
Don't
butt.
even get me started on that. Become a
Well,
troll. It's become a meme almost.
it is.
Forget
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Oh, speaking of memes and trolling, I think it's a nice segue into your Twitter account,
Mhm.
or I should say X account now, right? What is the nomenclature now?
Yeah, yes. I don't even know. I still refer it as Twitter or
Yeah,
refer to it as Twitter. Yeah.
at least from a reference point of view, I think we're in flux.
Uh,
But you have quite a bit of following on the platform.
mhm.
56, 57. What is it?
Yeah, something around there. Yeah, I think 50, 57 or so.
Yeah. So 57,000 people. That's a lot of people you talk to.
Mhm.
Um, and most certainly, I enjoy your memes. Like, I think that the two favorites that I see is I made this with CSS, and then a picture of something that is absolutely not made with CSS. And the other one is, rate my setup, or what is it?
Yeah, rate my setup, yeah, and it's usually like a toaster or something.
Yeah, 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 which looks like it's a laptop, but it's not. Yeah, I like that. I may not like every single, post that you do, but I sure do,
Yep.
enjoy, seeing them, fly by. So how did you amass such a large Twitter following, by the way? How did that happen?
So, I've got a whole presentation on that as well. If you want to chat about that sometimes, I think it'd be a good podcast as well as kind of how to
Okay.
get started. I think it's there's basically, you know, some fundamentals, like there's the first one being, pick a niche that you want to stick within. If
Yep.
growth is your goal, like it's not a goal for everybody. If growth is your goal and you want to use social media for marketing, I would say there's some rules you have to follow. One is niching down. So, like picking a category, being web development, being WordPress, being agency growth, SEO or whatever,
Yep.
and then just kind of posting content that relates to that and sticking to it. Doing personal stuff once in a while obviously is great because we don't want to appear as bots either. So you do want to have some personal stuff, want to have some fun, but primarily sticking to the niche. I think if you're not sticking to the niche, you're confusing people, and it's not, you're not going to experience growth as quickly. Then the other rule is kind of like making sure that you're providing value. So either by teaching somebody something, by being funny or entertaining,
Which you
or
are.
by thanks, or by just carving out a piece that maybe it's like contentious stuff or stuff that you're learning or
Yeah.
something like that. But again, fitting within that niche. And then the third one's consistency. So just being consistent, uh, sticking to the niche, sticking to the type of content that you're creating, and then just being consistent. And it just takes time. I mean, I didn't do this overnight. I think I've been at it for probably since 2020. So it's been a few years. I had my account since 2013 just to kind of reserve my name, but
Yeah.
I really use it almost hardly. And then, in 2020, I kind of started to, I discovered the community. That was the main thing. Like most of my friends don't know anything about web development or WordPress or SEO or anything. So it's hard to find, yeah, it's hard to find people that you could chat with about that stuff. So when I discovered the community on Twitter, I was like, super happy about that because, you find your tribe kind of thing. And so the content creation just kind of came naturally out of that. I didn't really have an agenda at that point, but I quickly realized, as I started posting more stuff and as I started, getting a bigger following, that there's a lot of benefits from that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I agree with all the three rules. I've had, I think probably by the end of last year, set myself a goal and see if I can get, I think I had 6,700 followers or something.
Mhm.
Um, let's see if I can get to 10K if that's a feasible thing.
Mhm.
And without knowing it, I implemented all three rules that you just highlighted, and growth came. And then it's interesting to see that I'm past 10K now. So
Yeah, I saw
you'll
that.
notice that as you start putting that attention there and do the engaging part and make sure that you're not looking like a bot, all that sort of thing,
Yeah.
is rewarded. And it's nice to see. Um, and
Oh,
I've mentioned this to you before when we spoke before this podcast, but it's impressive to see somebody uh, get acquire such a following in a relatively short time. It almost sounds like overnight success, but at least it took you like 3 years. But
yeah.
no,
It depends
no,
on your, like, there's faster ways to grow. They're just not my style. Like, you notice a lot of content, those listicles and like,
oh,
best AI tools. Like, I see some of those guys go from like 0 to 100K in no time, but, it's not my style either. I do want to keep it sort of, you know, somewhat fun as well.
I'll,
And,
I'll do
growth
like a
is not the
listicle.
ultimate goal.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll do like a listicle once every 2 3 weeks, just because
Yeah. It's,
a few things
Oh,
that make sense to share like that, but yeah, definitely
yep.
not by default.
No,
No, but
no. When you're starting, it's fine. I think a lot of people do that to kind of get some initial traction because the first, like, probably 1,000 followers or so are probably the hardest because
yeah,
you feel like you're, posting into the abyss. But,
all
so
really are.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a great, like, I read a quote somewhere. It says, if you don't have any followers, Twitter's a great note taking app.
Yeah, set your account private and you're there. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, especially with the extra features that we have available now. You can do long form, you can do
Yeah,
video, you can do vlog. We have all the options now.
totally.
No, interesting. So, in terms of WordPress and finding your tribe, what did you have as a tribe before 2020? Because you started in 2015, 2016, you said?
Yeah. Uh, to be honest with you, not much. I mean, I discovered some people. It was funny. Some of the people that I connected with after on Twitter, I actually discovered them through their blogs and stuff.
Hmm.
And to be honest, I just kind of fell into WordPress by accident, just because I used to do more application development. So, I did .NET for a while, and so I did most of my stuff in .NET in the
Yep.
early, I want to say 2000s. And
That's really
then
hard.
yeah, yeah, that was a while ago. I remember, like, creating like e-commerce stores and stuff in .NET, and it was like you had to code everything
Yeah.
and from scratch. So, from my like, and then for the web development stuff, if it wasn't like a web app, if it was just like a marketing site, we used to just use like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap for responsive, and that was pretty much it. And we used that from I want to say from when I started, probably 2007, when I started my company, all the way up until 2016. We kind of used vanilla, JavaScript, CSS, HTML. I created some CMSs as well using .NET. Believe it or not, back in the day, they worked okay. But
That's a daunting task. I
it
played with
is
.NET as well. That's not a fun language to work in.
no,
I mean,
well, yeah,
at least I didn't find it fun. Maybe you did, but
yeah. I mean, it's more. Yeah, in those days, I mean, there weren't a lot of libraries either, or like open source things you could lean on,
mhm,
or not in my experience for creating those types of solutions. So it was really manual, but there was a thing called Blog Engine. It was a
yep,
open source version of .NET,
yep.
um, basically a CMS for .NET. So I played around with that, but everything was a pain. Yeah, you want to create like a newsletter subscriber thing, you gotta code it up, right? Like, there's no, like there's no
Everything
plugin.
everything had to be thought of and built and
Yeah,
integrated and yeah. Yeah.
it was yeah, and
Yeah, one of
so
the tools I played with as well. Never had any fun with it.
no, it's just everything takes longer. Like, I don't mind coding, but, everything takes longer. So we actually stumbled into WordPress. I played around with WordPress in the early days, like 2010, 11. And just kind of had, when it was still more for blogs and stuff, like it was more just CMS focused. There wasn't much of a, website builder in those days.
Yep.
But and then I just kind of forgot about it. I didn't really use it. And in 2006, 2016, sorry, I noticed that a lot more clients are starting to use it for, the front end of their website in addition to CMS. And I started working with a few clients that already had WordPress websites, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go in and learn this thing. And it's like I see it all the time. Developers, cocky developers. Oh, it's just WordPress. I'll just figure this out in a weekend. I'm a
Yeah,
developer.
yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
doing. But it's a totally different skill set to have and a totally different tool. And
It is.
you know, so I just kind of got immersed into it. I just as I started to learn more about it, I started to love the platform more and more, and now we do probably like 99% of our projects are in WordPress. We'll have a simple site, like a landing page or something that we'll do manually still, like HTML, CSS
Yep.
kind of thing. But for the most part, WordPress is our tool of choice.
I have one. I literally have one static site.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've used CMS, so if I'm going back to Mambo and then Joomla, and then I had some HTML sites with it, in some way, in some capacity, and those slowly but surely all got gobbled up by me using WordPress for them.
Yeah.
But I recently introduced for my short URL remk.us. I hand coded it, like sounded like fun to do again. Like I think
Yeah.
it probably has been 7, 8 years since I last touched anything raw HTML. Like, yeah, let me see if I can still do this. Turns out I can. What do you know?
Yeah, of course.
But that is the only site that I have as a flat HTML
Oh,
site.
that's awesome. Is that open to the public or is that
Yeah,
something
yeah,
you only use for?
yeah. You can visit it. It's remk.us. It's essentially my link and bio site.
Oh, okay, cool, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's probably the coolest domain that I have. Obviously, it spells the
Yeah,
focus, but
yeah,
in the
yeah.
shortest fashion.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I have a domain that I'm planning to use for that as well to create like a URL shortener, but
Yep.
it's not as cool as yours. I think it
It,
has that extra character.
it has. Oh well, that's close. Now I have I'm using the URLs, the YOURLS.org link shortener in there as well. And it has the option for a static HTML site. It's in a PHP file, but essentially it's static HTML. What's in there?
Oh, cool.
And I'm using that, where the combination of that works just perfectly for that domain. So
Mhm.
all of my tracking goes on inside that domain, and all of the link and
Oh,
bio
nice.
stuff is that domain. So it was a fun exercise, but that's a fun way to sort of go back into history, because that's I I don't know how you see that, but for me, finding WordPress was a tool that helped me have a framework, and then within WordPress, I had other frameworks that I used and to build off of,
Mhm.
on top of. How do you say that? But so I used the Genesis framework for the longest time, like from the early beta version till I stopped using it at the end of last year. But the Genesis framework was a framework for me. ACF, and before ACF, CMB2, and before CMB2, CMB. I am
Mhm.
that old. Um, shout out to Brad Williams and I think Joe Hoyle from Human Made, who created the first version, or maybe just Joe Hoyle. I don't remember. I'm also that old, so I'll forget stuff. How do you see that? What are your frameworks? So I think we've heard at least one. That's Elementor.
Mhm.
Um, what is your view on frameworks and using solutions already made by others?
I'm a big fan of that. I mean, anything that we just talked about it a little bit, touched on it at the beginning of the podcast with like using the podcast tool. Like,
Yep.
why would you why would you code your own, in this day and age when you can use somebody's and actually focus on the things that matter is
Yep.
always my view. So I'm all for frameworks. I also understand the diehard, programmers that want to do everything from scratch. I think there's a balance. I think that there's a lot of great tools out there. The other problem I see usually with new people that are getting started is that they try to learn too many of them or try to do too many things, focusing on one and kind of reaching, something close to mastery or as close as you can in one is probably a better way to go.
Yep.
And, for us, yeah, that's Elementor. It does almost everything that we need. We also use ACF quite extensively for almost every project, I would say. We use
Yep.
ACF.
Same here.
Yeah, there's always a custom post, you know, thing that you need or something like that. That is usually easier to do with the plugin. And the other benefit is that it plays nicely with Elementor as well. So most of our projects are, I would say, like, you know, light code, not no code completely, but
Yep.
light code, customize a few things that we need to. But, um, I would say it's, mostly CSS related from a layout and design perspective, and then we
Yep.
have some customizations, from a JavaScript perspective, and once in a while from like if we need a new short code or something very simple, PHP. But for the most part, they're like fairly light code projects.
I I think I can say that what I see are happening around me is essentially either you're a hardcore developer still, and that's what you do, and
Mhm.
that's what you keep doing, and you sort of move to the back end,
Mhm.
or you're slowly but surely starting to incorporate low code, no code solutions. Um, Even if you look at WordPress itself, like the full site editor,
Yeah, exactly.
it's essentially there, right? Yes, you can change the code. Yes, you can figure some other stuff out. And if you
Mhm.
really want to manipulate anything that needs to happen, you know, there's still that plugin. But we're getting to the point that I would say we're getting close to the point where we can say that no code or low code is essentially the direction that WordPress is getting at. Would you agree, or is that too far fetched?
I would agree with that. Yeah, I guess it depends on how you view things. The the I think it's definitely going in that direction. We can see that, like you said, by the introduction of the full site editor, and it's not so much. And I'm not. I know why WordPress is going in that direction. There's a lot of tools propping up that are kind of trying to achieve something similar, like Webflow, Framer,
Yep.
and even Wix. Wix is a little bit different because they're actually trying to move in the like more code direction than the no code. They're traditionally a no code, but they're introducing this editor X, which is like, you can add code and apps and all kinds of things up top of it. So I think it's needed for sure in the WordPress space. And I think honestly that's the future. Whether we like it or not, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, some people like that, some people don't. So I think that's where it's moving to. And a lot of these tools are, like I said, Webflow and Framer are ones that kind of come to mind that are kind of carving out their own little niche as well.
Yep. Yep.
And
I like
and
what Framer does. I'm not a big fan of Webflow per se, but I like what Framer does.
yeah,
Just looks so easy to do.
yeah, totally, totally. Um, Yeah, there's a lot of tools like that out there right now, right? And all the ones that have been around for a while, like Squarespace and all of those.
Yep.
They're I know a lot of people in SEO that just use either Wix or Squarespace, and they still get great results. So it's not so much about the tool; it's more about I think the execution of the projects, and what you're trying to accomplish.
Would you say so? It used to be the case that WordPress had an edge over anything else out there because not only by default it was relatively easy for search engines to index your site, and therefore your
Mhm.
presence in search engines was also favored. But especially with SEO plugins, it was very well optimized. Would you say that WordPress has kind of lost that edge? Is that what I'm sort of reading between the lines?
No, not at all. I still think it's the best option if you're interested in SEO. I have a whole blog post on my blog actually that talks about why I think WordPress is still the best option if you're
Yeah.
interested in SEO from a
Yep.
CMS perspective. And the tools and the plugins and the automations are a part of that. Um, and that's one part. The other part, of course, is that the way it's developed is by design SEO friendly.
Yep.
It has some things in there that we take for granted, like for example, automated site maps. It seems like a simple thing, but
Yeah, it is.
Try creating one in a, JavaScript framework. It's a nightmare. Something
Yeah,
as simple as doing a dynamic sitemap is like super difficult. So there's a lot of things that are kind of inherent in the platform that so that it still has an edge as compared to these other solutions.
yeah,
And then, of course, the biggest benefit still, I think, to this day is the open source nature of it. Um, you know, if you don't like something, you can use the code base to do your own thing if you
yep,
wanted. And that's really, the power of it. I think it's, you can have your own playground if you want. You're not tied to a platform. The danger with platforms is always the lock-in, right? So vendor lock-in is huge. If you're in the Webflow ecosystem and you're creating websites for clients in Webflow, and all of a sudden, there's a 50% price increase. Well,
you're
you're gonna have
stuck.
to pay. You're stuck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and good luck convincing your clients to like switch frameworks just because something like that occurred, right? It's like
yeah.
they're not going to be as interested in doing that. So yeah, so I still think, and I think that's kind of reflected in the growth of WordPress. It still continues to grow, no matter what the haters have to say about that. Like
Yep.
there's still a lot of uptake. It continues to be popular, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting to learn because, from my perspective, it's always been the most sound choice. Uh, Obviously, I'm quite invested into the platform, into the community, the open source component, like you said. Yeah, those are all things that are still pulling me very, very, very strongly towards WordPress.
Mhm.
I do play around with other stuff. I never get excited about it. And then, that's also obviously part of. I understand this as a framework. I could do
Yeah.
anything with it. I have client sites that are racking in 4.5, 5 million page views per month.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Yeah.
I have client sites that are doing ridiculous amounts of revenue per month in terms of e-commerce. There's huge things that you can build with it, and mm, you know, my mom's blog is on there as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
she doesn't care what it is that she uses, just as long as it makes sense. And I actually had an interesting conversation with her over the last weekend, where she said um, that the new editor, like as we know it now, the block editor, is something she preferred much over whatever we had previously.
Oh, interesting.
And she said that out of the blue, and I was like, "That's interesting," because there's a lot of people yapping about, "I don't like the new editor. And can I
Yeah.
get the classic editor to get?" And
Like the editor.
I've never liked it. I mean, that's what we had, so
Yeah.
you work with it.
Totally.
Um, Yeah, so she said, like, it's straightforward. I give it a title and I start typing, and if I have something to add, I'll click the little plus button and I'll add an image or I'll add a list or whatever.
Totally.
And
Makes way more sense.
she's in her 70s, so she
That's
doesn't
amazing.
like anything to be complex at this moment in time. She's like,
Of
I want to
course.
do this, and want to write stories, so let me write my story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, focused on the content. Funny enough, like, we do almost, all of our sites, like I said, in Elementor, and we still use the block editor for like posts, right? So we
Yep.
create a post template, and then all of our blog writing and everything like that still occurs in the block editor, and I prefer it as well. Definitely over the classic editor, big time. But yeah, even for Elementor sites, we don't like create the posts using Elementor. Why would you? Especially when you're trying to kind of focus on the content
Yep.
and just, creating the content, adding images and all that stuff. We still use the block editor as well. So,
Have you been tempted to look at the site editor?
I have, yeah, it's definitely on my list of things to try. I've tried the different block editor tools. I think I've tried most of them actually already.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't tried the full site editing yet. Um, I it strikes me similar to the other kind of block editor type frameworks like Generate Press is one we use. Generate Blocks
Yep.
is one we use for a few sites. Um, I mean I like them. I think that they are a bit simpler to use maybe than Elementor.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree.
but yeah, the thing is though, one of the main drawbacks for me is that it's still a bit clunky,
Mhm.
especially for responsive design. Like Elementor really has that nailed.
Yep.
So it's quite reliable. Like if you're switching from desktop to laptop to tablet to mobile view, like you can expect everything is going to look a certain way and everything is going to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
And when you switch back and make some changes to one, it's not going to clobber the other one. Right. And
Yeah.
that was my biggest pain point with like Generate Blocks, for example, is I would design something, develop something for the desktop. I'd switch to mobile mode. Everything's broken. I'm like, okay, let me, make it sort of look better, look and work.
Acceptable.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I'm like, okay, great. Switch back to desktop. Everything's broken again.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
what happened? I didn't touch desktop. And so those like
Absolutely.
types of things, for me are like things that were preventing us maybe from moving in that direction a little bit more. I think, and the reason I was exploring in the first place, moving in that direction, was more from like a from a performance perspective. And but Elementor is also focused on fixing a lot of performance issues in the last couple of years as well. That has made that like a little bit less appealing anyways. Like a lot of the block ones that I've played around with didn't really give me too much of a performance boost.
No,
Uh,
most won't.
yeah. And so, it's
It,
kind of like there wasn't a big push for us to change. And honestly, at this point for us, it would be like a huge change because all of my developers and designers are all kind of like, trained their own Elementor. It would be a lot of work.
yeah, it would be. Again, it's like learning a new framework within a framework.
Yeah.
You'll have to get acquainted with all the little niggles and UI and UX. I will say this: I have been using the site editor since December of
Mhm.
2022 exclusively, and I think with WordPress 6.3, I'm running the beta and the release candidates on three separate sites, personal sites. So I don't do this with client sites, obviously, but I'm playing with them and just to see. And I noticed that if I now go back to a 6.22 site, I go look, can I get it to 6.3, please? Because it makes more sense. It's still not where I want it to be. But if I project what's been happening in the last 6, 7 months into the future, the next 6, 7 months ahead, I think with there will probably be WordPress 6.5.
Mhm.
I think we'll have a very mature site editor experience, and I wonder how much of a pull that will become versus any any type of page builder solution out there, because
Oh, for
it's
sure.
starting to become like a grown up thing. So,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
instance, a container, I still would like to just define whatever container I have and be able to add either an image as a background or a video or, but I can do colors and I can do padding and I can do margins already. Okay, great. But, I want that full control. So we're not there
Yeah.
yet. But to me, that is a matter of time
Yeah.
um, before we get there. And I'm very curious to see what that will look like in maybe take it like a little wider in terms of time, but maybe in about a year.
Yeah, for sure. It's improving every day, every release, right? So I think definitely something to keep an eye out on. And for us, I mean, for me specifically, I've switched tools and frameworks many times. We talked about that at the beginning. I
Yeah.
started with plain HTML, and it took me a while to get around like Bootstrap, for example, and using it, and .NET and stuff like that. So I have no problems with switching to me, it's more like, does it make business sense? And and
And that
that's
and
what's
yeah, no, and that should be the question, obviously.
yeah.
So I don't for those listening wondering how that came to be. So I had from April last year to the end of November, I had a sabbatical, reconfiguring whatever I did within WordPress or with WordPress, how I wanted to profile myself. And it kind of gave me a fresh start.
Mhm.
Now, I still had a few clients here and there. Um, but the idea that, look, if I'm reinventing myself, why don't I do it in the most modern fashion? And that was essentially the moment that I stopped using Genesis
Mhm.
as a framework because it just didn't make any sense. It's not being updated for the new world. So
Yeah.
am I going to bury myself even deeper? No,
Yeah. Sure.
I'm not. That doesn't make sense. Um, so yeah, that's how I forced myself into it. And I'll also be honest that I've had to have 5 sites rebuilt that I built in December, January, February era. They ended up being too far away from where the project was going, and I was making too many assumptions. Okay, you live and learn. So I reconfigured that. Shout out to Mike McAllister with Ollie WP because that theme is golden for me.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
really like what he's doing there. It's so easy to add stuff, change stuff, and the base is just perfect for what it needs to do. And I'm very excited to see what he does once 6.3 releases because I'm pretty sure that he has a big update coming, which he has been teasing
Nice.
already. But yeah, so that makes sense then, right? That's a good moment to change tools.
For sure.
Don't
And
do it if
y
your business
uh,
depends on it.
do you usually use the same theme for every project
Mm,
and then just
uh,
kinda configure it or
Yeah,
customize it?
I have a few favorites.
Okay.
I would say the last 5, 6 have been based off of Ollie
Mhm,
fully. But there are a few. Generate Press I use as well, and it kind of depends. Like so, if I don't generally do small sites much, but if
mhm.
friends of friends come, then I'm not going to say no, right? So
Yeah,
if
of
that's a
course.
small site, maybe 2.5K,
Mhm.
relatively fast throughput for me. I will look and see if I can find a cadence based theme that already makes sense. So I modify that or a generate press. Those make sense. And I'm more of the does it provide me the flexibility that I need, and is it performant? So
Mhm.
if it's not performant, I won't use it. If it's not flexible, I won't use it either.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's more how I look at things in terms of what do I use. And I try not. I genuinely try not to be too fixed on using one particular thing.
Mhm, mhm,
I like having. I like forcing myself to be flexible,
mhm.
if that
Yeah, for
makes
sure.
sense.
It no, it does perfect sense, yeah. Just
Like,
one of the kinda common things that I hear on Twitter is usually the most common question is like, "What theme do you like? What theme do
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
use?"
yeah, yeah,
And I usually tell people to pick like 1 or 2 that they
yeah.
can get comfortable with and learn kind of inside out because everything's a little bit different. It has like some, sometimes it's in the customize, sometimes they have their own menu, sometimes you have to use something totally different,
Yep.
and so it's good to get familiar with the single team and kind of use it for all your projects.
Yeah, I would say I've 4 or 5 directions,
Hmm.
and they're roughly in the same sort of area. But yes, Cadence has different options because you have the whole
Yeah.
blocks and everything. And in some cases, it makes sense to use my own theme, but with the Cadence blocks, so there's mixes that you can do. It just really depends on what the inside needs to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So here's another question I have for you, completely unrelated. Um, you went from working with a tool, not being familiar with the community around it. And then, whoa, hey, look at it. There's more people using it and they're actually active and talking to each other and all that. What's the biggest reward you see having gotten to know the community?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, like Um, I'll be honest, for like a new person kind of coming in, it's a bit maybe maybe not overwhelming. I'm an outgoing person, so to me, it's not overwhelming. But for new people, it might be
Yeah.
to kind of break into that sort of like community,
Sure.
I would say.
Culture. Yeah.
For me, it was a little bit, yeah, the other way around. I started using the tool and then I discovered the community, and everybody's been kind of great to meet. And it was actually awesome to kind of get, just to kind of share knowledge and experience, and to share some kind of lessons and learnings and things like that from other people in the community. And,
Yep.
and there's some great things happening in the community as well, that perhaps even people that don't build websites with WordPress that are involved in other ways. There's also some great podcasts like yours out there as well that I've been a
Thank you.
guest on. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of cool things. Michelle also does some awesome kind of like job sharing,
Yep.
content, and to help people get a job in WordPress. So there's a lot of like cool things happening around the community. But yeah, for me, it's been the other way around. I started using the tool, and then I kind of got online and discovered that there's like all these folks, and it's been great, like to kind of learn from people, and to have them kind of learn from me, and vice versa. And so it's been really kind of refreshing and great from that perspective. I think there's a lot of value in that. Especially, for me working with some tools in the past that didn't have that, it's like you're in the dark, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to find answers, and get help when you're stuck, and things like that. So yeah, that part's been great actually. It's definitely a big bonus.
And then the bonus of friendly answers as well, which I found um, as I was introduced to the WordPress community. This is 2006. I had questions like, how do I solve this? How do I
Mhm.
do this and do that? And um, coming from Joomla at the time, whenever I had a question, I would be met with, "Oh, haven't you read the documentation?" I have, but it's not clear to me because I'm new at this. So, you know, possibly point me in the right direction. And then when I did that in WordPress, I got like answers like, "Oh, great, thanks for asking the question." I'm like,
Yeah.
that's already starting differently. And then I would get an answer that was essentially a tutorial. I'm like, okay, this is also an option. I like it.
Oh,
I like it.
totally.
It was a warm bath for me at least.
And the other thing that's kind of people underestimate is the amount of like uh, knowledge and information out there for a tool like WordPress.
Yeah.
Also, if you don't use other tools, it's kind of, you don't appreciate it as much because, I worked on a few projects with Drupal, for example.
Yeah.
You run into an issue, and, they have a forum, kind of support forum, and you go in and post something, and you're literally waiting for days and days for somebody to see it, or
Yeah.
like for somebody to respond, because the community is not as large. Like, people are also friendly and very helpful,
They are.
but it was like, oh my God, like you can't just go and Google it. There's like, there's no information.
Yeah.
so, so it's, yeah, it's
I,
definitely one of the things you don't appreciate until you get in a different kind of situation or scenario.
yeah. I remember this happening I don't remember the time that it happened, but I remember it happening that there was a moment when you Googled something, it changed from having all these options to just understanding Google understanding probably my search history as well. So it would
Mhm.
feed me more personalized stuff. But at one point in time, the answers to every question that you would have, even roughly HTML and CSS type stuff, it would always be WordPress related. It
Oh,
was
okay.
like this turnaround point, like you go from, Googling whatever you needed, and then maybe find something on Stack Overflow, or maybe find something on CSS Tricks, or, whenever
Yeah.
whatever the technicality of the question was. And to the point where you now just pretty much know for sure you're going to end up at somebody's blog post on WordPress about WordPress, which is amazing. And I remember at the time, and I think this is probably in the 2014, 2015 range. I remember the time like, whoa, I'm just always getting a WordPress answer now. That's
Mhm.
so, And I also remember playing with, because I don't know if this still works, but you could use um, like a parameter to your search queries on Google that would make
Mhm.
it not
Yeah.
personalized, and it would just still be the same answers. I'm like, okay, we have
Mhm.
moved on here. This is
Yeah, yeah,
becoming dominant.
totally.
One of the
Are you finding, are you using, ChatGPT for some of those questions now?
oh, a lot actually. Um,
Yeah,
so I one of the first things that I did was uh, work with the prompt. So figured out which prompt gave the best answer. So you know the answer. I started with stuff that I knew. So I would then figure out how to ask the question in 4 or 5 different ways. So I got the best answer. So for
yeah.
instance, if I have a code snippet that I need, or let's just say I need a little code snippet, right? Now I can figure it out. But let's see if ChatGPT can do it. I ask it in such a fashion that it not only does it in WordPress coding standards, it takes care of the PHP version that I say that it needs to be compatible with. I have it include doc block, so full documentation of the thing, um, and do that whole thing. So I played with that to have those types of commands. So I
Mhm.
now get perfect results. I will say the quality's gone down in the last
A little
month
bit,
or
yeah,
two.
I've read that, I've read some
Yeah,
interesting articles about that actually.
I have it prompted again, but just playing with the prompts on ChatGPT, I thought was just fun to do. And the same thing goes with creating content. If I have like something I don't fully want to deep dive into, but I want to include it and do a post, and I'll have ChatGPT say, write me
Mm,
400 or 500 words for this.
uh-huh.
And I get it to output it in such a fashion that Yoast SEO says, wonderful.
Mhm, mhm.
Transition words,
Yeah.
no long sentences, everything that you want to see as a human. And then I turn it into my own voice, but then I have the base already there. But
Mhm.
playing with the prompts is the thing that I find the most fun. It's just, if you just use it like blank, like, give me this,
Yeah.
it'll do it, but it's not good.
I think it's, you know what it is? It's like we're so used to Googling things
Hmm.
that we keep it as generic as possible to get the most results that you can
Yeah.
kind of filter through and find what you need. Whereas in the difference with ChatGPT is you could be very specific. So for example, what I started doing is similar to you, but I even ask it to, okay, these are my variable names. This is what I want the function to be called. This is what,
Yeah.
like I specify all
Yeah.
those
Same.
things.
Same.
And then it like gives me exactly what I need with the variable names. I don't have to change anything. Right.
Yeah.
And then I think the kind of cherry on the cake or where these tools are way more valuable, I find, and why I think some of the search engines are in trouble is that like you can ask a follow-up question. So if you don't like something or
It
you're
will
like,
apologize.
it will apologize. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It'll say, you can say, for example, instead of using jQuery, give me this same function in vanilla
Pure
JavaScript, right?
vanilla. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can't do that on Google, obviously, right? You'd have to
Yeah.
do a bunch of other searches and it just takes so much time. So
Yep.
you can talk to it and give it additional instructions. And that's really the value of it, I think, is that it kind of retains that history of what you were asking it for in the
Yep.
beginning. And then you can
The context.
modify your ask as you go because
Yeah.
maybe you've realized, oh, actually, that's not what I want. I want it to be this, and it'll kind of modify it based on that. So that's to me, that's very powerful. And that's why I've been using it for, like you said, little code snippets here and there, and then actually discovering that's actually not what I want. I want it this way.
Yep.
It still has
Yep.
the context. It just says, actually, okay, yeah, just change this and it should work the same way kind of thing.
And here's a funny thing. I before ChatGPT, I have like probably around 30 WP CLI scripts that do certain things, check stuff, and I have pretty much all of that automated.
Mhm.
I have a local file that then does the checking in on the servers and check all the things that I want to know. So I have a lot of stuff automated, but I've never really used Bash beyond. If you don't know, Bash is the a shell script language, so something you can
Mhm.
do in the command line, but sort of
Yeah.
program it into it, I guess. So you
Yeah.
can
Kind of script.
program. WP CLI scripts inside a little sequence of things that you do.
Mhm.
And I knew a few things how to do, but what ChatGPT really taught me, like I learned from ChatGPT, like, okay, I have this, and this script, but I
Mhm.
want to combine it in such a fashion that I can do this and this and that with it. But I don't really know how to do that in Bash. And it
Mhm.
would tell me. And here's the fun part because you then get a script, you test it, you go, oh shit, that works. I
Mhm.
would then ask, explain to me why this works. And then it would explain to me like all the variables and the choices it made while doing that. And then, oh, okay. So it taught me Bash
Great learning tool. Yeah, yeah.
in a way that I learn best when it's contextual. Like I need to solve
Yep.
this now. This is how I would do it. It's not doing it. Help me solve it. That's
Mhm.
a bit that's way different than I just throw something at you and here do this, follow this course, and then you'll know Bash. Then you go like,
Yeah.
I don't know
Totally.
what to do with this.
Totally.
But
Totally.
using it in such a fashion, I found just a joy to work with. Yeah. Now, good
Yeah, no
question.
doubt.
ChatGPT or any LLM in that for that matter is going to change our work drastically,
Mhm.
way more drastically than people possibly can imagine. I think.
Mhm.
I think most don't even have a clue, even though you're playing with it, even though you're doing already a lot of various stuff with it. I think it's going to blow people's mind where we are in 2, 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, I agree.
So, yeah, I think we're at the end of that allotted time that we have.
Mhm.
I want to thank you for being present and very fun to talk to. I wish you best of luck with finding your way, weaning yourself off of Elementor. And thank you for being on the podcast. That was obviously a joke.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. Great, great, great chat. And yeah, if it was great to meet you as well. You're one of the people that I kind of met early on, I think, in the kind of
Yeah,
WordPress space. And so yeah, glad to meet you and chat about all this stuff because I can talk about these things for hours. So
yeah, yeah. Same here. Same here. So, thanks so
yeah.
much.
Awesome. Thanks, Vern. Because